The man who directed Unforgiven doesn't forgive everyone. For over 6 decades, Clint Eastwood has commanded Hollywood sets with an iron will and zero tolerance for unprofessionalism, building a blacklist of actors he'll never work with again. The director, famous for efficient one-take shoots and treating crew like family, has permanently banned 5 performers who violated his sacred code of conduct. From method actors who wasted millions with their narcissistic demands to stars who disrespected the filmmaking process Eastwood holds sacred, these 5 actors learned that crossing cinema's last cowboy means permanent exile. Today, we expose the actors who pushed Eastwood past his breaking point and why the man who made Dirty Harry won't make anything with them ever again. 5. George Clooney. The first name on Eastwood's list might surprise those who remember their collaboration on Space Cowboys, but George Clooney's evolution from respectful collaborator to political preacher violated everything Eastwood values about professional filmmaking. While their 2000 space adventure went smoothly, Clooney's subsequent transformation into Hollywood's self-appointed political conscience deeply offended Eastwood's belief that actors should act, not lecture. The rift began developing in the mid-2000s when Clooney started using every interview and public appearance to push political agendas. For Eastwood, who maintains strict political neutrality on set and believes filmmaking should unite rather than divide, Clooney's constant grandstanding represented a betrayal of cinema's purpose. Clint watched George turn from a professional actor into a political activist who happened to make movies, revealed a producer who worked with both men. For someone who believes the work should speak for itself, Clooney's need to preach from every platform was insufferable. What particularly disgusted Eastwood was Clooney's habit of creating division on film sets by bringing up political topics during production. Multiple crew members reported that Clooney would initiate political discussions between takes, creating tension among cast and crew who held different views. This stood in direct opposition to Eastwood's sets, where political discussion is discouraged to maintain professional harmony. Clint's sets are about making movies, period, explained a cinematographer who worked with Eastwood. George turned his sets into political rallies. The breaking point came during a Directors Guild event in 2011, where Clooney publicly criticized Eastwood's film J. Edgar, suggesting it didn't go far enough in its political commentary. According to witnesses, Eastwood's jaw visibly tightened as Clooney lectured the room about filmmakers' responsibility to take political stands. Later, Eastwood told a colleague, "Some people make films to change minds. I make films to tell stories. If George wants to be a politician, he should run for office." The philosophical divide became irreparable when Clooney began demanding that his films include specific political messages, often hijacking productions to insert commentary that wasn't in original scripts. For Eastwood, who shoots scripts as written and respects writers' visions, this behavior was professionally unforgivable. Clint sees actors who rewrite scripts to push agendas as narcissists who think their opinions matter more than the story, explained a screenwriter who worked with Eastwood. When Warner Brothers suggested reuniting Eastwood and Clooney for a project in 2016, Eastwood's response was swift and final. "I don't work with activists pretending to be actors," he reportedly said. The studio never brought up Clooney's name again. For Eastwood, who spent decades earning the right to tell stories his way, Clooney represents the corruption of cinema by ego and politics, 2 forces that should never drive filmmaking. The man who made $1 Million Baby to explore human complexity has no patience for actors who see films as political soapboxes rather than artistic expressions. 4. Sean Penn. The 4th spot on Eastwood's blacklist belongs to Sean Penn, whose volatile temperament and exhausting method acting represents everything Eastwood despises about self-indulgent performers. While both men share reputations for intensity, Penn's explosive behavior and need to turn every role into a tortured artistic statement fundamentally clashes with Eastwood's efficient, no-nonsense approach to filmmaking. The conflict traces back to Penn's behavior on various Hollywood sets that Eastwood heard about through his extensive network of crew members. Clint would hear these stories about Sean showing up completely unprepared, then demanding dozens of takes to find the character, revealed a first assistant director who worked with both actors. For Clint, who often prints the first take and moves on, Penn's approach was wasteful and disrespectful to everyone's time. He once said, "If you need 40 takes to find your character, you should have found it before you showed up." What particularly infuriated Eastwood was Penn's notorious habit of challenging directors and creating conflict on sets. Multiple sources reported Penn would openly argue with directors about their vision, sometimes refusing to perform scenes unless they were shot his way. For Eastwood, who both as an actor and director believes in clear hierarchy and respecting the chain of command, Penn's behavior was professionally treasonous. "Clint sees film sets like military operations," explained a producer. "Everyone has a role, everyone follows orders, and the mission comes first. Penn acts like every film is his personal therapy session." The animosity intensified when Eastwood learned about Penn's treatment of crew members during the filming of various projects. Reports of Penn throwing tantrums, destroying equipment, and verbally abusing assistants reached Eastwood through cinematographers and grips who'd worked with both men. "Clint treats every crew member like they're essential, because they are," said a veteran gaffer. Hearing about Penn screaming at electricians or throwing chairs because his trailer wasn't right made Clint furious. He has zero tolerance for prima donna behavior. The breaking point came during a Hollywood foreign press event where Penn arrived intoxicated and proceeded to deliver a rambling, confrontational speech about artistic integrity. Eastwood, who was present, reportedly left in disgust, later telling a friend, "That man confuses being difficult with being an artist." Real artists make everyone's job easier, not harder. When Eastwood was developing Mystic River, studio executives initially pushed for Penn to play one of the leads. Eastwood's response was immediate and non-negotiable. "I'd rather shut down production than deal with that chaos." He cast Tim Robbins instead, who won an Oscar for the role. For Eastwood, who has directed over 40 films with minimal drama and maximum efficiency, Penn represents the worst kind of Hollywood excess. An actor who creates problems instead of solving them, who mistakes difficulty for depth, and who puts his own process above the collective goal of making a good film. 3. Marlon Brando. The third name on Eastwood's list is perhaps the most legendary method actor of all time, Marlon Brando, whose destructive genius and contempt for the filmmaking process earned Eastwood's permanent disdain. While many directors tolerated Brando's increasingly bizarre behavior for the sake of capturing his brilliance, Eastwood saw him as a cautionary tale of talent corrupted by ego and laziness. Their paths crossed during Hollywood events in the 1970s and 80s, and Eastwood witnessed firsthand Brando's transformation, from dedicated actor to contemptuous saboteur. Clint watched Brando destroy productions with his refusal to learn lines, his ridiculous demands, and his open mockery of directors, revealed a studio executive who knew both men. For someone like Clint, who can direct and star in a film while bringing it in under budget and ahead of schedule, Brando's wastefulness was criminal. What particularly disgusted Eastwood was learning about Brando's behavior on Apocalypse Now and the island of Dr. Moreau, where he arrived grossly overweight, refused to learn his lines, and demanded millions while delivering minimal effort. Crew members who worked on both productions shared horror stories with Eastwood about Brando reading cue cards hidden around sets, demanding his lines be fed through an earpiece, and refusing to be filmed from certain angles. Clint believes actors owe maximum effort for minimum drama, explained a cinematographer. Brando gave minimum effort for maximum drama. The philosophical divide between them was absolute. While Eastwood prided himself on efficiency and professionalism, Brando seemed to delight in making productions as difficult as possible. During a Directors Guild screening, Eastwood reportedly walked out when someone praised Brando's genius for improvising entire scenes because he hadn't bothered learning the script. Later, Eastwood told a colleague, "There's nothing genius about disrespecting writers, directors, and crew members who depend on you doing your job." What sealed Brando's position on Eastwood's list was his treatment of younger actors and crew members. Stories reached Eastwood about Brando humiliating young performers, deliberately ruining their takes, and using his legendary status to create a toxic environment. Clint heard about Brando making a young actress cry by telling her she'd never amount to anything, revealed a casting director. For Clint, who mentors young talent and gives first-time actors major roles, this was unforgivable. When Francis Ford Coppola suggested Brando for a role in one of Eastwood's films, claiming his presence would guarantee box office success, Eastwood's response was characteristic. "I'd rather make an honest film with unknowns than enable a man who treats filmmaking like a joke." For Eastwood, who views cinema as a sacred craft requiring discipline and respect, Brando represented the ultimate betrayal. Proof that unchecked genius becomes indistinguishable from destruction. The man who built his career on professionalism had no patience for someone who built his legend on making everyone else miserable. 2. Tom Cruise. The second spot on Eastwood's blacklist belongs to Tom Cruise, whose obsessive control over every aspect of production and manufactured persona represents everything Eastwood finds false about modern Hollywood. While both men are known for doing their own stunts and maintaining incredible work ethics, Cruise's need to micromanage every detail and maintain an artificially perfect image fundamentally opposes Eastwood's authentic, straightforward approach to filmmaking. The conflict stems from Cruise's notorious behavior on sets, where he essentially functions as an uncredited producer, director, and script supervisor regardless of his official role. Clint heard about Tom basically taking over Mission Impossible productions, overriding directors, demanding endless reshoots for perfection, revealed a stunt coordinator who worked with both actors. For Clint, who trusts his collaborators and often prints first takes, Tom's obsessive need for control was pathological. He once said, "If you need to control everything, you're not an actor. You're a dictator with a SAG card." What particularly bothered Eastwood was Cruise's carefully manufactured public persona and his demand that everyone around him maintain his illusion of perfection. Multiple sources reported that Cruise's sets operated under strict rules about eye contact, personal space, and never discussing certain topics. For Eastwood, who prides himself on authenticity and treating everyone as equals, Cruise's hierarchical approach was antithetical to good filmmaking. "Clint's sets are democracies where everyone has a voice," explained a producer. "Tom's sets are kingdoms where he's the only voice that matters." The breaking point came when Eastwood learned about Cruise's behavior during the filming of various projects, where he would undermine directors by going directly to studios with his own edits and demanding changes. "Clint believes the director's vision is sacred," said a cinematographer who worked with Eastwood. Hearing about Tom essentially hijacking films in post-production made him furious. He said actors who think they're directors should have the courage to actually direct. What cemented Cruise's position on the list was the infamous leaked audio from the Mission Impossible set, where Cruise berated crew members for breaking health protocols. While some praised his dedication, Eastwood reportedly saw it differently. "That's a man who loves power more than people," he told a colleague. "I've never raised my voice on set in 60 years. If you need to scream to get respect, you never had it to begin with." When Paramount suggested Cruise for a role in one of Eastwood's films, citing his box office draw, Eastwood's response was immediate. "I make films, not products." Tom makes products that happen to be films. The studio understood the message clearly. For Eastwood, who values authenticity above all else, Cruise represents the plastic perfection of modern Hollywood, a performer so consumed with control and image that he's forgotten the simple truth of acting. Sometimes the best take is the honest one, not the perfect one. 1. Shia LaBeouf. The #1 spot on Clint Eastwood's blacklist belongs to Shia LaBeouf, whose destructive behavior and complete disrespect for the filmmaking process represents everything Eastwood has fought against for 6 decades. While Eastwood has worked with difficult actors before, LaBeouf's combination of violence, unprofessionalism, and contempt for collaborative filmmaking earned him the distinction of being the one actor Eastwood has openly stated he would never allow on his sets. The animosity began when Eastwood heard about LaBeouf's behavior during the filming of Fury, where he pulled out his own tooth, refused to shower for weeks, and cut his own face to appear more authentic. For Eastwood, who has directed war films with actual veterans and understands real sacrifice, LaBeouf's antics were deeply offensive. Clint was disgusted that this kid thought mutilating himself was acting, revealed a producer who worked with Eastwood. He said, "I've worked with men who lost limbs in actual wars. They don't need to smell bad to understand suffering." What escalated LaBeouf to the top of Eastwood's list was his pattern of violence and aggression toward colleagues. When reports emerged about LaBeouf's arrest on Broadway, his physical altercation with Tom Hardy, and the allegations of abuse from FKA Twigs, Eastwood's contempt became absolute. "Clint has zero tolerance for men who abuse their power," explained a casting director. When he heard about LaBeouf's treatment of women on sets, he said something I'll never forget. "A man who hurts those weaker than himself isn't a man at all." The breaking point came when Eastwood learned that LaBeouf had been hired for a Western being shot at the same studio where Eastwood was working. According to witnesses, Eastwood made it clear to studio executives that he would not share facilities with LaBeouf, stating, "Either he goes or I go, and I've been here longer." The studio immediately relocated LaBeouf's production. This unprecedented move sent shockwaves through Hollywood, as Eastwood had never before made such a public stand against another actor. What particularly infuriates Eastwood is how LaBeouf hides behind method acting to justify his toxic behavior. During a private screening, when someone defended LaBeouf's intensity as artistic commitment, Eastwood responded sharply, "I've directed Morgan Freeman, Gene Hackman, and Hilary Swank to Oscars. None of them needed to terrorize anyone to find their characters. Talent doesn't require cruelty." When a young director recently asked Eastwood's advice about potentially casting LaBeouf, citing his intensity and box office appeal, Eastwood's response was unequivocal. "You can make a film with him, but you'll lose your soul in the process. Some money isn't worth earning." For Eastwood, who has spent 60 years proving that great films can be made efficiently, respectfully, and professionally, LaBeouf represents the absolute corruption of everything cinema should be. A collaborative art form built on mutual respect, not a platform for narcissistic destruction. And there you have it, the 5 actors who earned permanent spots on Clint Eastwood's blacklist. From George Clooney's political grandstanding to Shia LaBeouf's destructive narcissism, from Tom Cruise's obsessive control to Sean Penn's exhausting method acting and Marlon Brando's legendary contempt for filmmaking, these actors violated the core principles that have guided Eastwood's 6-decade career. What's most revealing isn't just who made the list, but what it tells us about integrity in Hollywood. Eastwood proves that demanding professionalism isn't old-fashioned, it's essential to creating great cinema without destroying people in the process. Were you surprised by any names on Eastwood's list? Which actor do you think most deserved their spot? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more explosive Hollywood revelations.